Well, thank you, Eric, for coming to Mid-America Flight Museum and shooting a walk-around video on our newest acquisition, a UC-78, or some people know it as a T-50, and most people recognize it as a Bobcat built by Cessna. First flight was in 1939, actually, and by the end of the war, they'd built 5,422 of these airplanes. They started out as a civilian airplane, a T-50. And Cessna was going after that light twin market, a cheaper airplane than the Beech-18 and some of the other airplanes that were out there, easier construction. It was a 5-place airplane. If you look on the inside here in a little bit, you'll see how big the airplane really is, but it seats 4 very, very, very comfortably, but you could actually put 5 in it pretty easy. Cruises, the book shows different things, but it really cruises an honest 145 to 150 miles an hour indicated. It's got 2 Jacobs R755, which are 245 horse engines. They are constant speed props, but they're not feathering props. So that's something a little unique about the twin. It's the only twin I've ever flown, well, other than the Ford Trimotor, that doesn't have feathering propellers. It was built as a T-50 for a civilian market, and the Royal Canadian Air Force saw a need for a multi-engine trainer, and they actually bought 550 of these before the United States government. And they did that, I believe, in 1940. So before we had entrance into the war. But again, 5,422 of these things were eventually built, and almost with very few exceptions, any of the World War II pilots that you talk to that flew any of the multi-engine airplanes like the DC-3 or the B-17, B-24, B-25, most of them logged some time and maybe even got their multi-engine rating in the UC-78. I bought this from Terry Sullivan, and I've known Terry for many years. He finished the airplane restoration, I believe, in 2007. He bought the airplane was pretty well, had an accident and was pretty well cracked up. The fuselage was in good shape, but the wings were pretty much destroyed. So he completely rebuilt the wings. And one thing unique about this wing is it's one spar from tip to tip, around 42 feet all the way across. So the wing does not come apart. The fuselage actually sits on top of the wing. So it's kind of unique construction that way. It is a pretty long-winged airplane, so a lot of people with your normal T-hanger, it won't fit. So some people have a little trouble fitting them in their hangars. But Terry really did a good job of going back as originally as he possibly could, but he made the airplane very safe to fly. He's got a set of Cleveland brakes on there. We have a lockable tail wheel, but it's not steerable, so all you have is differential power and braking, you know, for taxiing the airplane, like a lot of the airplanes, these old ones that we've got. So it is really nice to have a nice set of brakes on the airplane. It's a completely built of wood, tube, and fabric, just like a J3 Cub. There'll be some solid plywood in the airplane, similar to that of a Howard DGA, but most of it is just ribs and fabric, and that's the way it was constructed. So for back in the day, it was kind of easy construction, easier than the Beech-18, and it was less cost that Cessna was going after this particular market. You got your flaps here. The stall speed on the airplane, yesterday when I was flying, I had on half fuel and 2 of us, about 55 miles per hour is your honest stall speed, and it's very docile. Just pull it back, hold it into the stall. It didn't do anything. It didn't do anything crazy. It's a very docile aircraft. And again, about 145 mile an hour cruise speed. I run at about 1,800 RPMs and 22.5, 23 inches of manifold pressure. It actually clicks along faster than I expected it to, because this is the first UC-78 I'd have ever even sat in, much less flown. And we talked about the tail wheel being a lockable tail wheel. Trims are very effective. You use elevator trim quite a bit. So if you go from 150 down to 120, you'll put a roller to a trim, and it's got good rudder trim. But I didn't even touch the rudder trim actually in takeoff or cruise. Okay, we're inside the cockpit of the UC-78, and as you can see when you pan around, it's a very large cockpit. It's the first thing that surprised me. The back seat people, tremendous leg room. You don't get that in hardly any airplane. at all. It's legal for 5 people, and but 4 is pretty nice. By the way, about a 3,500 pound empty weight and about 50, I think it's 5,600 pounds gross weight. So after you get full fuel in it, you're still good for about probably around 900 pounds. So, you know, technically it can haul a pretty fair load. Here in the cockpit, it's a pretty original panel. Terry did a really good job of keeping it original. We're probably gonna over a period of time, you know, come in and clean it up and do some work on it. But your switches are over here. Your battery switch is way over here. Your master switch, right there, and then you have starters left and right, and here's your magnetos right there. Primer is over on this side of the panel, so, and then it's like a Beech 18, and I don't know if that's original or not, but you turn the primer to the left, you prime the left engine, turn it to the right, you prime the right engine, and the left electric boost pump is what feeds the primer. So you turn on your left electric boost pump and you get pressure, and then you put about 4 or 5 shots of prime in each engine, turn it off, and then give it a start. Definitely want to always pull these props through. Although Jacobs are not terrible about hydraulic lock, you definitely want to pull the props through before you go. But once you get to going, you know, your quadrant here is pretty straightforward. Throttles right here, props right here, mixtures up here are lean, and you go down is rich on the mixtures. And this next lever right here is carb heat, and down is cold, and then up is hot. So that's your throttle quadrant. Pretty straightforward actually. And landing gear here is up, down, and then you have a center position, kind of like the old 310s. And so if you had to crank the gear down, it's dirt simple. Put this in the center position so the thing will not kick on, and then you got yourself a little handle here, right there, a little square handle. It just slides right into that spot, and you can just crank the gear up or down. There's no lock because it's a worm gear, so wherever you stop, that's where it's going to stop. The gear's not going to move past that point. So it's a pretty safe gear actually. Down here's our fuel system, and we got left tank and right tank, and then we have a cross feed back here, and that works actually really well too. And then we can come to our auxiliary fuel tank, which is behind the back seat. It's a 40-gallon tank. So left engine's on the left tank, right engine's on the right tank, and cross feeds off. That's the normal way you would run the airplane. Your trims are back up here behind us, and I don't know if you can turn around and see this, but we have a rudder, which you seldom ever use. Then we have our elevator trim over here, and then we have our tail wheel lock. Kind of important on these old airplanes. Doesn't matter what you fly, but you want to go ahead and get that tail wheel locked on takeoff. It's a takeoff item. These little vents right here look like submarine periscopes right there. They're very effective. It pulls in the air and blows it out, so you got plenty of airflow through here. But that's pretty much it. It's extremely simple cockpit, and you know, if you've flown a few other airplanes, you get in this thing and you feel very comfortable very quick. So we had those couple squawks, gear indication, and actually the flaps won't come up right now, so it's a micro switch. But the airplane hadn't flown in almost a year, so we got to tweak on it and get those couple little things fixed, and we'll go out and put some time on it. I'm looking really forward to it and letting you go fly with me a little bit.
That'd be fun.
Looking forward to it, and then maybe get some good air-to-air shots of it. That'd be cool. But Eric, again, appreciate what you do. I've said that so many times. There's so many people who are not here, and you know, this thing goes around the world. People long way off that don't get the opportunity to even see these airplanes, much less flying them. And you know, they may be in a nursing home somewhere, and they feel like they're here, you know, watching your videos. So they're at first I kind of wondered about them, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, and then I can see you've really got an amazing following, and I really appreciate what you do.